And good evening, everyone. Welcome to another OSR Tabletop with myself, GM Bloodworth. Um, as it's typically been every Sunday night, or practically every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I do a live stream. I will be inviting people in on these, and sometimes they're open mic. Other times, I do have a topic I want to talk a little bit about, and most of the time they kind of just go on a random stream of consciousness, and we go in many different directions. So, but I do have a topic for tonight, and I wanted to bounce this topic off of everyone, and looking forward to doing that. Let me check with the chat first and see who is in the chat already. Hey, Death Angels, how's it going? It's been a little while, so good to see you. And hey, tomorrow night I will be. I'll probably be available for your Monday night. Fairly certain you do Monday night, so I will see you then. Your stream tomorrow night, since everything here is going to be closed. So yeah, definitely check that out. And good to see you. So tonight's topic is encouraging tactical caution during high stakes encounters. So, when I was trying to think of a topic, for this evening, and I was thinking about some of my recent gaming, and in particular, I was thinking about, I had run Deadlands, second edition, for the first time on Thursday, and it was a kind of like an introductory scenario where both myself and my players, we were learning a new game system. Right, I have never run Deadlands before. None of them have ever played Deadlands before. The one player was a little bit more familiar with Savage Worlds, which I've played as a player, but I've never run Savage Worlds either. And there was, I did this in the recap for that particular session, but there was one moment when I rolled for an NPC on a stagecoach, and he fired a shotgun at close range against one of the bandits that the player characters were also fighting. And I rolled 3 6s, which became on D6s, obviously, which became an exploding result. And then I rolled the next 2 die. I'm sorry, all 3 came up as exploding. So I rolled 3d6s again, and now 2 d6s came up as 6s. And then I rolled those 2 one more time. And as it turned out, that one shotgun blast unleashed 44 hit points of damage to the opponent that he was shooting at. And, and despite the fact that, those kind of weaker opponents only take 1 wound before they're dead, that would have killed any player character. That would have killed most things in the game with that one shot. And it dawned on my players in that very moment that, this is something that could happen on any attack roll, and because of that exploding dice nature, and that, they'll have to be, particularly careful, and hopefully lucky that they're not on the business end of that kind of a die roll. And what I liked about that, and really ties into this here, is that my players immediately thought about what kind of gear and what kind of weapons they want to carry with them, and what kind of gear they want to have, at their at their disposal. And they immediately became far more tactical in not just what they would do in combat, but perhaps even how they could potentially avoid unnecessary combat because of the nature of that. And so when I was thinking about this topic, and I really don't know which one came first, was did I gravitate to this topic because of that experience, or or vice versa? So but it was certainly something that made me thinking, or made me think about, how do I make or encourage my players to utilize a certain amount of caution with whatever action they happen to be doing, without being overly cautious as well, because that pendulum could swing the other way to a disadvantage as well. And and I don't want to couch this in a discussion of, well, this kind of high stakes only takes place in combat. No, there could be high stakes in exploration. There could be high stakes in in traversing very difficult terrain. There is high stakes in negotiations. Even though it's meant to be very a social interaction, it's it's still high stakes as far as consequences are concerned in it as well. And anything that I can encourage my players to think more about what their characters are doing, or how they're acting, or what they're saying, is, I think, a net positive. So I'm going to jump to some of your comments here, but that's really what prompted this. And then I started looking through and seeing, well, what are some other elements of this that I think really does come forward with, with what I'm looking to do with this, and how I would utilize this in the future, in the very, very near future, right? So let me just go through some of these things. Let's see. The first session of Deadlands was a fun one. Yeah. So yeah, I do have some of my players here, and that is that's definitely going to be a blast, because it really did inspire me. Thinking about this topic, I will definitely be pulling off some the Clint Eastwood tactics in that game. Yeah. Um, my ear trumpet, thank you as always for your incredible generosity. And let's see, and who won that? So no one of any consequence, or no one of consequence. Sorry, a very, very frequent person on the in my chats and everything like that. So great. I'm glad that you picked up a free membership from my ear trumpet. Thank you so much. I never used a system with exploding dice. Yeah, exploding dice really does take what would normally be just a simple attack roll, and potentially damage being dealt, and it just far more, in most cases, than just rolling a critical, because the exploding dice occur on whether it's attacking or damage die in Deadlands as well, and then probably in Savage Worlds as well. So yeah, it really is a cool mechanic. Certainly the something that will automatically turn the tables on an event as it's unfolding. And exploding dice are always fun. So let's see. I didn't see the name. I thought you were saying that someone of no consequence won the membership. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's something that I'm thinking about, really trying to immerse my players into. And again, like I said, not just in combat situations, but let's say you're doing a dungeon crawl, right? And you're going through there. Well, I don't want it to be just like, hey, you do you're detecting traps and you discover traps. No, I want them to actually talk through that. I don't want that to be something that is just a dice roll. I want it to be higher stakes than that. I want them to actually have to, so let's say they detect a trap. It's like, all right, now I want you to describe how you're going about disarming this trap. And I want to know specifically what you're doing. Now, I'm doing the secret dice rolls to see whether or not you're successful or not, but I'd rather hear what you say. And if what you say is going to alter, the die roll in any, extreme way, then I will side on what you're saying and what you're acting and interacting in order to create that tactical mindset that I want players to do. I'd rather have fewer, more detailed events than them just rolling through a whole bunch of, oh, here's a bunch of combat scenarios that we or scenes that we've gone through. This, we've gone through 10 rooms of investigation and searching for traps and doing this and that. I'd rather have them spend a much more time in each particular scene, going into much more detail about what they're actually doing while they're there, and then attaching various tactical considerations and both benefits and consequences to what they're doing. Another thing that I noticed during our session in on Thursday was that you know I fairly described to the players the consequences of shooting from horseback, since they're all first level characters and they don't have that training yet of combat from horseback, and so they were all suffering a -2. Fortunately for them, their opponents were suffering the same -2. So there was a lot of shooting back and forth and very few hits over the span of several combat rounds. And there were, four-player characters and actually five NPCs, four adversaries, and then one other NPC on the stagecoach, and they know, like, none of them thought to themselves, hey, you know what, I'm going to ride close to the ride close to the wagon and then dismount and then start shooting, because now I won't have that -2 to hit, and at least I'll be a little bit more sturdy for the next shot or two. Hopefully, my horse doesn't run away, but it would have been a tactical consideration for them to decide, I'd rather increase now my ability to hit the target, and potentially, something of negative consequence happens, such as my horse gets spooked and runs off, or I'm not able to get, I'd have to mount back up again, lose a round of action there, and then get back into the chase after the stagecoach that is rambling down the road, and these bandits are attacking it along the way. But yeah, that would be a tactical consideration that they would make, in order to, try to get a more positive result. And it would have been great to have seen that kind of a thing. So I'll see what else we have here in the chats. Nothing just yet. Now I'm going to open this up for you to come in and talk a little bit about it. Meanwhile, I'm going to look over, some of my notes here and some of the little prompts that I generated while thinking about this. So Here it says we strip away the safety of the stat block to force players into genuine tactical dread. Yeah, I don't want my players to feel dread because I think that you will send that pendulum over into the wrong direction. They'll become overly cautious. I also at the same time tell my players to play boldly. All right, to be bold with their characters. I don't want them to be foolhardy, and I don't want them to be overly cautious. I want them to try to strike that kind of a balance, but to keep on thinking tactically, right? Um, by telegraphing environmental lethality and monster capabilities through narrative cues, rather than giving them numbers, you know, you'll create a challenge within the encounters for the players to decipher, right, and to make a decision based on those cues that they're receiving, as to what a better course of action might be than what they're currently doing if it hasn't been working. um, Now, this ties into, you know, the concept of the OSR, right? So mastering the OSR ethos here. The topic bridges your expertise in systems, like, and I listed this, these systems such as like Deadlands, because that is what prompted this whole thing. But also like Shadow Dark or Old School Essentials, by emphasizing player ingenuity over character sheet power. All right. So it gets you to go beyond the character sheet, which is something that I've been saying now, going on several years. That, the reason why I like more simple systems, and this is really where the OSR shines, is because players are going to go beyond that character sheet more often than not. So don't tie yourself down to a character sheet. And, well, if it doesn't say my character can do this on the character sheet, then I'm not even going to try to do it. I'm not going to try to think outside of the box or tactically or something along those lines. And I think the OSR really does open up, more so than a game system that has a rule for virtually everything. So I think it does open up a lot more freedom to act in those simpler systems. Um, yeah, combat should be a last resort. Yes, and it should be when the scenario that they find themselves in, um, has different routes that they can take in order to still accomplish their goals, right? And you as a game master should always have several different ways to skin the cat, as it were, right? So yeah, you should always have the potential for different resolutions than just, shoot and kill it. And there might be other situations where shooting and killing it is the best choice. It is the most tactical choice in that too. But over time, the players um, will learn the differences between those through your narrative cues that you're giving them. Um, it's like a fight or flight response that they should develop over time as well. If you have the image that I used for the thumbnail for this kind of shows that you see the guy and there's this huge, like, eldritch horror creature behind him, and he's certainly looking to flee that. Right, he's making the tactical decision that I'm not messing with that, and your players need to create that. All right, in their own mind, they need to understand. This situation doesn't look good. I'm going to get out, or uh, I've looked over this situation and we're kind of stuck. So we're going to just have to dig our heels in and just duke this out. and hopefully we come out on top. Um, and with the possibility of exploding dice, there is a very, very good chance, especially with four players playing, or possibly even more, and rolling dice during their turn to go, basically that they will have greater opportunities in many cases than their weaker opponents, and or it really depends. If they're up against a whole horde of things, then they'll actually have the shift of advantage there too. But yeah, I think it's great to encourage them. It's great to put them into a situation that you've described narratively to give them an accurate picture of the situation that they're in. Let me get to Death Angel's comment here. Oh, wait. Yes, negotiation avoidance, etc., should be valid. So is running away, which I just finished going over. Yes, running away is always an option. But like I said, sometimes it might not be the best option. But if you've described the situation well enough for them to make an informed decision, that's the way I would go with it. Um, Hey, Ducato, how's it going? I'm going to open this up for you guys to jump in and talk about this as well. Give some of your own experiences on in doing so. And so there's the link if you want to jump in. I will certainly let you jump in on here, and we will talk. I'm not going to bring that up there. I had a screen to share. Another comment that came across as I was trying to piece this together was the unique strategic pivot, right? So, by focusing on environmental lethality and telegraph danger, you provide a distinct uh, learning angle that complements your existing deep dives. In other words, if you're doing a deeper dive into a particular situation, particular scene, then your details that you give your players will better inform them on how to make that strategic pivot of whatever they happen to be doing. Hey, Timmy, how's it going? Um,
Yo.
and Tim is one of my players who was in that situation, and he experienced that firsthand, and
Yeah,
so I'll let you talk a little bit, Tim.
I gotta say, sometimes it's just like some reason, sometimes the DM won't be able to roll good around me unless it's for my team, it seems.
Mhm.
Had that happen with Bubba too.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Like,
a yeah, it's the I think it's one of the real benefits of everyone's rolling in front of each other, and the fewer secret rolls that you have, the better. And then everyone can see what's going on, and then the players characters react to the situation that is taking place. It's like it does lend itself to greater role playing as well,
yeah, I
which
say
is
not
another
just
point I want to bring up. But yeah, go ahead, Tim. I'm
it's
sorry.
either not rolling in secret or at least trusting the people that you actually play with because it's no
Yeah,
fun if people cheat.
yeah. It's a it's something that normally, if you were sitting at the table with one another, um, I have not rolled.
In
I haven't
person.
rolled combat rolls
No.
behind a screen in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Probably have to go all the way back to my youth. I think I've been rolling combat rolls in front of everybody as far as an adult game master for the entire time. Maybe back in the day when I first started game mastering back in like 83 or 82 or 83, Then it was like you had the screen, you rolled behind the die, and you don't let the players see the rolls that you were doing. I think that the hobby has shifted, these last couple decades, where
It's more about
secret roles have become,
rare.
discouraged. Let's
Yeah.
say.
If
So,
well, oh man, yeah. Back to the whole tactical thing, though. Well, I have a few stories about that. Back in RuneQuest, when I played with my cousin, he was a strange one. He didn't start out very good at the game, but he caught on really quick. And then I gotta say, all his ideas were completely crazy, off the wall. I did not think any of them would work, and then they just somehow would. And I'm just like, what do I know now? Like
yeah.
there was like this like whole thing where we were having to deal with this like evil creature, just purely evil, and we were having to deal with it. We thought we'd have to kill it, and then my cousin was like, "I got an idea. I'm going to talk to it." And like, this is not going to work out well. He's like, "Hey, look, you're stuck in here. We got a person that we could hand you off to. You'll be able to feed, and you'll be happy." And I just sat there and thought, "Okay, you know what? I'll listen," and joined him. He basically gave his god a evil monster to become that god's assassin. Like,
Yeah.
okay then.
Yeah, sometimes you have to trust your players in order to, take it in a different direction than you might have even been able to, you never imagined that it would go in that direction, and sometimes it just becomes a real turning point in everybody's experience, and that's why it says, a strategic pivot is, if you see that you're in a situation where, it's not working for you. You do something tactically, and it all of a sudden it pivots. Now, as a game master, you have to alter the game mechanics in a way to compensate for that, right? So, in my Dragon Slayer campaign, my players are very experienced players, and they'll say, well, my character is going to move and position him or herself, and in such a way to try to gain an advantage on that. And even though the game mechanics don't say that they get a bonus to hit, you should give it to them, because you're encouraging tactical caution or tactical advantages that they're looking to gain. And giving them a couple points is not going to, giving them 2 points, an extra +2 to hit, is not like you're giving them roll with advantage kind of thing either. It's a little bit less than roll with advantage, but it's still something that they're going to want to get their hands on, right? Provided that they explain what they're doing in such a way that it's convincing, that it makes sense, that they would have a tactical advantage in that circumstance. So again, I'm not opposed to rolling with advantage. I just think that there's too often the roll with advantage is just portrayed as being something that mechanically happens as a result of something else that was done, and not necessarily what the player has actually described their character doing. Uh,
That's fair.
does that sound
Yeah, I could see that, and that would probably make me want to use one of my tactics I've been thinking about using in Bubba's Dragon Slayer game.
right?
I'm playing a cleric in that one. I
Mhm.
He gave me some interesting. I got some pretty interesting gear in that. One is a cape of flying. Another one was a headband that gave me the ability to cling onto ceilings, hide in shadows at 90%, and dark vision. So one thing I want to do eventually is just like hide on the wall on the ceiling for a little bit and come down on an enemy.
Oh, you could certainly do that.
I'm basically Batman as a
Yeah.
cleric.
um, so I want to get to so like if now I'm not saying that all roles are done in the open. Um, so certain roles like if the player character is not supposed to know that they failed a roll, then you're rolling that secretly. Like hey, I'm searching to find traps. Oh, I if the player rolls it, so I'm the player, I roll it, and I was like, oh, I was successful. All right. There's that they shouldn't know that they were successful in in finding a trap or not. You just tell them, well, you don't find a trap. If even if they were successful, it's like they shouldn't know that. I'm not wording it right, but they shouldn't know uh things that the player knows that the character wouldn't know. And I'm a big proponent of separating player knowledge from character knowledge. They're two separate knowledge bases, and and so that's why not all roles are done in front of them. Um, yeah, we're stubborn to God. Oh yeah. Um, Again, it's like, yes, I do put a game screen out. I mean, not obviously not of my home games, but I do put a game screen out. Usually, I'm just covering my notes. But if I'm doing a secret role, such as surprise, or if I'm doing a role to random encounters, that's not going to be done in front of them. Uh, if I'm rolling behind the screen, just to kind of prompt my players to move forward a little bit faster. That whole thing of you're just oh, the GM's rolling something. Let's let's get focused here. Let's get on track, kind of thing. Um, Certain game systems handle that differently or better than others, such as like Dragon Slayer. Since we're mentioning, I mentioned it earlier. Um, Dragon Slayer actually has like a kind of a timer that's going on where you roll for random encounters every 20 minutes of gameplay, basic things. So, when if they're not really paying attention, have their own stopwatch going on, they'll assume that something is not, something's potentially going to happen, or that's why you do it kind of randomly every once in a while, just to kind of throw them off and throw that internal timing off. Because again, player knowledge versus character knowledge should be two different knowledge pools. But anyway, so let's see. If anyone else wants to jump in, you're welcome to jump in. I will put the link in there. And so let me get to some of the other points that that both this document here and some of the other things that I were looking into is so getting back to encounters. So again, encounters aren't just combat encounters. Encounters can be simply walking into a room, and if there are maybe there's traps in that room. Do you want this trap to be a trap that they can they can think about and think tactically about it? Maybe it's a very mechanically sophisticated trap that with proper descriptions, they will start to think of a way that they could potentially disarm this thing, whether they make the roll or not, whether the thief or rogue in the group makes the roll or not, I think becomes less important than whether they can articulate what their character is doing better than even their dice roll would allow for. And so give me if you've got to run to a quick convenience store. Yep, you take your time, Death Angel. I will be around for quite a while. This thing's only 35 minutes into running, so be here for at least another hour. But anyway, So again, when they're into a room, let's say there's no traps or anything like that, but you want them to look for certain evidence in this particular room. Maybe they're in a library and they're looking for a particular book in this library. Well, there's a tactical way that they can go about doing it rather than just saying, "Oh, we're going to search the room," and not give any more description to what they're doing than that. Um, Maybe the players, get their characters amongst themselves and they say, "Hey, you know what? You're going to go through this section and you're going to look over here and you're going to check you're going to check under this category of books and see if you find anything in that. You two, you're going to look through that particular cabinet there and just kind of divvy up where they're all going. And I would give them advantages to either finding things happening or more likely, what I would have is they will discover anything that they're spending enough time looking for, but it'll take them less time if they're being much more tactical in their search. And I think that that is a better way to encourage tactical conversations amongst the player characters, so that they'll start to realize, they'll start to learn that, um, yeah, if we're really focused on what's at hand here, um, we're going to be able to get things done much faster. Much faster as far as the time consumption is concerned with it. And I mean, Dragon Slayer has certain things that work along that mechanic, right? So when player characters assist each other in doing certain tasks, it makes those tasks go by much faster. All right, not just easier but faster, and a lot of times the faster is more important. And again, you need to put things in place for that kind of a response from your players. All right, you want them to desire to be more efficient in the way that they're going through through their adventuring. You want them to desire um, having those conversations amongst their characters, and in character as much as possible, to work with each other, coordinate their actions together, anytime that they're going into an encounter. In combat, that's another whole thing, right? But it's still a tactical mindset that you should go into a combat situation with. It's like you don't want the players sitting there just simply waiting their turn. You want them listening to what everyone else is doing and thinking about what their next step is going to be, and to be ready to modify what's in their mind with what they're about to do. Now, I've had this with Dragon Slayer, my Dragon Slayer group, uh, where Dragon Slayer says that they have to call ahead of time what their spell is going to be for that particular round. And because clerics can because clerics oftentimes have to act like the combat medic, to use a military terminology. um I don't force them to do that, because they can dump any spell that they have prepared for the day for a cure light wounds, basically. um they don't have to pre state what their spell is going to be if they're going to ultimately resort to cure light wounds. All right, because that's something that needs to be done on a decision, that they're witnessing the event happen in the moment, and so they can make that change in the moment. They don't have to wait the next round in order to have an opportunity to now cast thing, and I'm kind of debating whether or not to further encourage tactical thinking and to allow spellcasters, not just clerics, but other spellcasters, to potentially change up the spell that they were planning on using. Instead, the situation has changed, and that might mean the spell that they're going to cast has changed. So again, the mechanics of the game may sometimes get in the way of this this encouragement of tactical caution or tactical decision making in the situation. And I'm basically saying, don't let the game mechanics get in the way of your players thinking. Their players thinking through their character actions.
I get that.
Drive faster. No, take your time, please. There's no rush at all. So Tim, where do you stand on that?
For me, it's whatever the DM says. I can't really say that I'm gonna argue with the guy who makes the rules. For me, I do like the idea, but that's what I've been using my scrolls for. Was basically a way to give me options. Like,
Oh yeah. If you have backup scrolls and everything, and again, that gets into, um, the whole idea of the players starting to be better prepared for when they're going out adventuring, right? And that's something that I've been doing in my Dragon Slayer. I mean, we only had one session, and already you guys, when you're getting into town, I forget who it was that said it, but it was like, oh, I'm getting a shotgun when I go in.
that was me.
Oh, that was you. So yeah, you immediately you saw something happen, and you're like, oh, I don't care what, I'm going to go into that town and I'm going to look to buy a shotgun, just because you saw that effectively. Now, the chances of you rolling 3 6s,
Not much, but either way,
yeah, but
just
still,
being able to throw that 3d6 in to begin with might be devastating.
Oh yeah, just rolling the three, the 18, on a 3d6 roll would have been devastating, to begin with anyway. But then having it explode a second time, on 2 of the die, is another thing. But yeah, you want to encourage your players to be prepared for the next day's adventure, and to start thinking about, well, what could we potentially encounter? So, and I can see a scenario where the player will ask, the game master, well, what are we going to potentially, encounter tomorrow when we're adventuring? I wouldn't answer that question. All right, because again, that's player talking to game master.
Yeah.
All right.
I also don't think that how our first bandits went, but the thing is, not every time we probably don't have to kill every bandit we go up to.
No, it's true.
Back in the Old West, it was actually kind of rare for that to happen. Most of the time, most bandits would most thieves would just like surrender because it's just better to do that.
Well, it depends on what the the consequences of their surrender would mean. They could be swinging from a tree if they surrender.
But most were just like small time thieves. They weren't going to get anything major, so they
would have most likely fled. All right.
But if they got cornered, they'd probably then just be like, yeah, you know what? It's not worth it. Just surrender.
Yeah. Which, unfortunately for them, because the hidden role in that situation was, the morale, the morale didn't break. They were still like, although they dropped when they did finally start dropping, they dropped fast. Like within one round, they went from 4 to 1. Pretty quickly.
There isn't really much of a morale roll after that. It was just over.
Yeah, no, their decline, because I think there was probably between the first person catching the the first bandit catching the bow, to, the arrow to the groin and killing him with that. There was probably like another 2 rounds that passed before two more got dropped really fast, and so that was that was a big difference. Was that it was like, wow, they really didn't have that much time to react from being from 4 to 3, and then from 3 to 1 was instant, right? So that was very little time for the one final guy to be able to react to that. Hey,
Probably would
how's
have
it
had a
going,
little if it
Jeff
was.
Woodyard? Good to see you.
He probably would have had a little
Uh,
bit of time if it wasn't for the shotgun.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's that. That was the because I think, if I recall correctly, it was 3, and then suddenly it was 1 in just one cycle of it. So Robin run away. Yes, Danger reared its ugly head. He bravely turned his tail and
Oh
fled.
my
Yes,
god, I know what
yeah.
that's from. That's that Robin Hood like adventure game.
No, no, that's from the Holy Grail.
I thought that was from that point and click adventure
No,
game.
Monty
Yeah.
Python's the Holy Grail. Sir
Oh,
Robin.
maybe they made a reference to it in that game. Then I don't
No,
know.
well, yeah, they probably did. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
that's a so and Bo, I'd love to hear your comments on this as well. So again, getting that player tactical thinking. The prompts were saying like tactical caution. I'd rather call it tactical thinking. To be honest, as I've been mulling this over in my head, the last couple hours, thinking about how I was going to present it. But Yeah, I think tactical thinking is a better way of putting it because caution's kind of a loaded term, right? Because you can have an overabundance of caution, and now your player characters are too hindered by it. Um, hey, well, happy birthday!
yeah,
Happy birthday for you
yeah,
to you.
yeah. Happy birthday,
Um,
Bo.
yeah, uh, yeah, yeah. So happy birthday, Bo. Yeah, we'll be sure to look for you tomorrow and see how everything's going. So, like I said, I'm going to definitely grab Takato. Is there a live stream tomorrow with you guys tomorrow evening at? I thought it was always like Mondays at 6 o'clock. Correct, 6 p.m. Eastern. If it is, then I'm definitely going to try to jump in with you guys on that and see. I haven't seen Roger yet, so Roger's probably the guy to do it. Big 5-0. Yep. Oh, well, for me that was 9 years ago, or virtually 9 years ago. So you're still younger. You're almost a youngster, but you are. I did a video the other day, kind of, addressing. Oh no, that's Tuesday. Oh no, I'm working Tuesday. Oh crap! I thought it was Monday. Somebody streams on Mondays. Um, the What was I going to say? Oh, I did a video the other day talking about I'm going to start focusing on some of the tabletop role playing games of the 1990s, which is kind of a dead zone for me, right? Because I was not in the tabletop role playing sphere through the 90s and 2000s, not until up to the mid 2000s, like from like 90 to 2015. So almost 25 years I was away from the tabletop role playing game hobby and more focused on CRPGs, computer RPGs, console RPGs, MMOs, whether it be PvP MMOs, those kinds of things. and so yeah, that's why people in their like between like I think 35 and 54 is the age range on my channel where most of my channel subscribers and
Hey,
visitors and
Paul.
everything fall within. So hey Paul, how's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah, I was watching your video. Your video either earlier today. Everything is a blur. Sometimes it's like so you were talking about you were talking about the guy that
Mike
didn't
Neistel,
fulfill
yeah.
his Kickstarters.
Yeah, he went underground for about 13 years and then started popping
Yeah.
back up. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so
it was interesting. Someone going by the name Chris Perkins was going after him, and I was wondering if that was the Chris Perkins
it probably
for
was.
for several of his because he was a backer. So it was in the comments section. He was talking to the Texas Attorney General's office trying to go after him because that's where he resides. And I was like, wow, this guy's really going for it. But it
Yeah.
made sense. Like, yeah, honestly, it was like a 16 grand, like a 24 grand, and then like a 38 grand Kickstarter. He just pocketed the money and vanished for 15 years. And it's like,
Oh, they said some of his other Kickstarters were even bigger than that.
really? Because he had two that failed. So
Yeah, they
I
were
know.
no, it was more in the tune of like 40,000
Yeah,
for one of them.
I might have misquoted that. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
looked back at it. Because Karen, I think, was the big one, and I'm not sure how much of that remnant became what is it? Whatever his name
yeah, yeah.
is
Whatever
Karen,
that guy is.
or if it was a different system. Because it was another one of those like Mice Night games where it's like, oh, fuzzy
Yeah,
animals in medieval times, and I was like, okay,
I
I'm
thought
not
it was
interested.
Cairn 2 was the bigger one.
Yeah, but I think those are Yochai Gall, who's an
Yes,
actual
yeah,
designer and actually completed something with his time
yes.
and money. So
But anyway,
yeah,
um, yeah. I mean, they certainly got bigger, I guess, when others took them over. But yeah,
sure.
yeah, that was an
Yeah.
interesting thing because I was like, all right, this is another, you know, another content creator that went to Page
Yeah.
and was somebody that would like, you know what, he was kind of an unseemly individual as well.
Well, that was the thing. Like, yeah, he would flown under the radar for a couple of years because, like, I was going after him, but then Andrew Shields stepped in and finished Axes and Anvils. It just kind of sucks that he did it without any money, considering he put all the work into it. And it's a good game. It's a nice dwarf role playing game. But yeah, he what was it? He showed up on Dungeon Delvers live stream,
Oh,
promoting his game, and I was like, this guy, you know.
yeah,
So I went and talked to Bill after the show was done, and I was
right.
like, yeah, those guys that were mentioning in the chat about the Kickstarters, yeah, this guy that you invited on, etc. And he was like, I had no idea, and I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's why he did it.
yeah, because they fall on like I had a couple of Kickstarters that just never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, they weren't like big, big, infusions of my
Investments,
money into them.
yeah,
I think one was like $15, $20. It's like, you know what, it never happened. Um, Another one was like a PDF bundle that never came through, or maybe I just missed it or whatever. But that was a bigger company, that was like a well-known,
oh well,
who was that now? Peter Jackson Games did a PDF bundle that never got the bundle.
Steve Jackson
Um,
games,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, never got the bundle. It goes back a couple of years. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a huge amount. It was like maybe $20 or something. I was like, I don't think I ever got this. There was another video game that was kickstarted that was supposed to be like a World War One, like Call of Duty kind of video game,
okay,
and I never got the code for that.
sure.
I never got the code
I,
for Kingmaker. And then when it was like $4, I was like, all right, screw it, I'll just buy it because it was only
sure.
$4 on Steam on sale at one point.
I'm still
But
down. I think it's either 50 or $60 for two copies of Star Citizen. I don't think I'm ever going to see that. That's been
yeah,
in development for like 17
Yeah.
years now. It's
oh
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. They I backed that actually back then.
Yeah.
I backed that when it first came out. I think I backed it at $100 or maybe even more.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Back then I was, I was still working and I was, had a little bit more, freedom to buy things and put money into the hobbies that I was currently in. But yeah, Star Citizen was a long time ago because that was before that was like 2009, if anything, like close to that, or certainly before 2015.
Yeah.
But the other news that came out was Ryan Dancy, which was the other that was the MMO that ended it for me with MMOs at that point was Pathfinder Online.
I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, and that was Ryan Dancy's debacle. Was with Pathfinder Online. That's because he had no. He either had no idea of what he was doing with starting an MMO, even though he worked with, CCP on EVE Online, like he was their, one of their operating officers. He was kind of shady with them too. So it was like, so when I heard that he got fired from what is it, Alderic Games or something like that. They're like a board game company, which I know very little about.
Yeah.
I don't deal
well,
too much with board
AEG
games.
was they were the original publishers of Legend of the Five Rings and Seventh Sea.
Yes.
And then they stopped publishing RPGs about 12 or 13 years ago. And then they just went strictly for board games. So yeah, he was with them for a while. And then
for a long time.
Zinzer, who's
at least 2015.
Yep.
Because I think when Goblin Works was the name of his division of Paizo, like Paizo knew well enough to let them branch out instead of throwing the whole thing under their banner. But yeah, that was a freaking mess. That Pathfinder Online was a total mess, and I think we only had like 3 developers working on it, and that's what caused it to really flounder. But that and just his poor decisions, decisions to he was trying to make a PvP game, but he didn't like PvP. It was like no, that doesn't work. You can't have PvP without consequences because then no one's going to want to play it. They want consequences.
That kind of sounds boring.
Right.
Yeah. It was like
I'm not even a PvP guy. I'm just like that. That still sounds boring. Is not possible.
Yeah. So
and those guys, if they're big into PvP, they love the consequences. I was playing on what was that? The Germans did a private server for World of Warcraft, and they had it in there where it's like you could do PvP where it's anybody can attack anybody, and if you kill them, you can steal their equipment.
Right.
And there's like a special currency you can get, and it's like, yeah, these guys are just murdering each other. Crazy.
Yeah. No, he didn't like player versus player looting. He did not want that in there. And he came from Eve, which was like, that's all that Eve is like, it's like, and I think he got so butthurt about it that, and he's such a, like, that's what we're saying. Like, you're a Care Bear and you're creating a Care Bear version of a game and you're trying to sell it as a PvP game. And yet you're so opposed to player versus player that you want to defang it before it's even launched, and it was just a mess. But anyway, does anyone remember MUDs? Yes, I do, although I wasn't, I guess because those were just like mostly like dialogue kind of things.
Text-based, yeah.
Yeah, they were text-based and that was more like when I was playing PlayStation, PlayStation, console RPGs were more MUDs than, but the computers certainly did it too. Based RPGs a la Zork, yeah.
A lot
text-based, yeah.
A lot of them are, you remember Temple of ASCII? Or also was rebranded by Epix as Temple of Apshai? Did you ever play
I
that
don't
back
remember
in the
that.
80s?
No.
It was all done with ASCII graphics,
Mhm.
but it was maps. You had maps with little dots and little letters that represented different things, and yeah, all kinds of stuff. I think a lot of the MUDs were like that too, where they
Yeah,
were. It was just ASCII fed, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was using text graphics, but it wasn't like Zork or
right.
Hitchhiker's Guide or anything like that. Which, by the way, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was the first video game that I beat in one sitting, which was an all text based adventure. I think it took me God 52 hours straight or something like that.
Wow.
I was up straight for that. I was a kid. I could do that back then, but
He wasn't selling dice pencils, was he? No.
oh, so that's the one that like Tenkar and Don Samora and those guys are harping on. The guy that floats.
Was that Whit? Oh, that was Whitman, right?
Yeah. That's why I said that. And I was in, you know how Tenkar Eric does the like the Discord things. I think it's on Thursdays, and
Mhm.
I said, hang on a second. I grabbed a pencil and a little and I went dot 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 dot, and I said, here, I made one for you.
Yeah,
Would you like to buy it? $5.
that's funny.
That's literally all it is just the printing on them, It's just you're printing, 1 through 6 pips,
My
So,
cousin playing on a Commodore 64. Yeah.
yeah, I played a lot of games on the 64. Neuromancer, that was fun. Those are all those early, and then I played a lot of the Sierra Online games, which were not online, by the way.
Yeah.
Sierra Online is just the name of the company.
Yeah. Sierra was the I played
Premier.
High Seas Trader, which is where the name Bloodworth came from. That was the game where I put together Bloodworth as a name to use, in my computer gaming, was High Seas Trader, and
That sounds
absolutely love that game. And I was like, all right, that's cool. I was, that's when I started playing a lot of pirate themed games and everything.
Did you ever
like
play
Uncharted Waters.
Oh, go ahead.
Like
Say
Uncharted
again,
Waters.
Timmy?
Like Uncharted Waters.
Yeah, but that came much later than. Yeah, this I think
that's the one I know.
High Seas Trader was like 96. If I recall,
so
it was like 96.
Oh, I already
one was like Cutthroats. I love that game too. Cutthroats and the original Sea Dogs, the original Sid Meier's Pirates came out around the same time.
I had broadband back then. I was already off of dial-up in 96.
Yeah.
I was going to say Commodore 64 era was you couldn't even remap your keys. You had like that punch out you could put on the keyboard to know what the keys did. I was like, yeah,
I remember those things. Yeah,
old school.
Yeah, I love the Commodore 64. Programmers were better back then, though. If you look at some of the amazing stuff that was done with the Commodore 64 and the Atari 400 and 800, I mean, I'm not even talking about the Amiga and the Atari ST. I'm talking about the generation before that stuff. The first time I ever heard a video game on a home computer talk was on a Commodore 64.
Mm.
I mean, it was the Ghostbusters game, I think, and it would open up and it would say Ghostbusters, and then it would play. Then it would play the Ghostbusters theme song.
I think the earliest game I've ever heard talk was actually on the NES, and it was the B-52 Bomber.
Mm-hmm.
They had like that sound thing that you could attach to it to
make
the noise.
I think the ColecoVision might have had.
That might have been a ColecoVision. I might be
It had an extra like sidecar box that plugged into the cartridge port or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. I was mistaken. It was a ColecoVision.
Yeah, it was one of the. Well, there was the Coleco, and what was the other one that was just looked just like it? I always mix the two of them up. At any rate, I never had those. I wasn't,
No,
that
I
was
wasn't
that
young
was.
enough. That was before my time.
Oh well, I was right in the. Yeah, my neighbors had one. I was so jealous, and but
Yeah, I didn't have a Commodore. I think the first computer I had was an Apple IIc.
I'm sorry.
Um, huh?
Nothing. I'm not an Apple fan. I'm an IT
Hey,
guy. So
Bloodworth, did you get to play Wizardry on it?
To be honest with you, I don't remember because the consoles were better than than the computer games at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I remember playing on the Apple was the dragon, that looked like a chicken. That was like, that thing, and
To be fair, Bloodworth,
there was a lemonade stand game that I played on that, and running a lemonade stand.
Well,
and,
the Atari 2600 had Adventure, and the Yellow Dragon looked like Big Bird.
yeah,
When you
that was.
killed it,
Maybe it was
next fell
Atari
backwards, yeah.
that I was thinking that game on. Because I had the Atari before the 2600. There was the Atari.
Well, there was Pong, and then they came out with the 5200, and then the 7800.
Yeah,
And but that was about the time that the console market, the first big console market bubble bursting, when they were dumping ET in the landfills and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
my first console was the Telstar, which I think was in like '74, and that was just Pong. Yeah, that was literally just Pong on there. But anyway, we have run far off astray. So I'm
yeah.
a software engineer by day. I love Apple because after a day of fixing code
I hate touching them.
on Nintendo boxes and Unix platforms,
Give me Linux any day.
Mm.
Give me Linux. I'll even take Windows, although Microsoft is on my bad side right now.
yeah,
But I think they're on a lot of people's bad side. But
I think that
they're in trouble.
They did another oopsie.
Pushing Copilot and all this stuff. I don't want AI on my stuff. Keep your AI away from me.
Yeah, I think if I have to change OS, it's going to be Linux now.
Yeah.
I have no choice anymore.
Wasn't it earlier today or yesterday that like a division of Apple ceased because all of the AI decided that the old programming was obsolete, so it deleted it and rewrote it. So it was offline for 13 hours while the AI rewrote the entire system.
Well, there was a major outage. There was an AI attack on AWS, which is Amazon, and people don't realize how that they think Amazon, and they're like, oh yeah, I order stuff from Amazon all the time. What they don't realize is Amazon has one of the biggest server farms in the world. And they sell that space. We have a lot of customers that use Amazon AWS. Microsoft has Azure, and then Google's got, or Alphabet, whatever they want to be called this today. They've got their own their own server farms. So they're in more than just what they're known for. They're all trying to push in the cloud, push everybody to the cloud. Well, if you put all your eggs in one basket, what happens when that basket gets broken into?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a problem with like some AI, especially for people like us with our running our home games, whatever. Yeah, publishing. Yeah, I get that. But AI is still. I don't think AI is will ever be as good as the pipe dreams are trying to sell. Everything, they always build stuff up for the stock market and the investors.
Technically, it's not really AI either, but
It's right, exactly. Yeah, but that's what they call it. Just like the cloud, people think the cloud is actually in the sky. No, the cloud is just somebody else's computer.
Yep.
That's all it is.
All right, there we go. So there is the last of my 5, and let's see. So D&D Dad and Son, hey, congratulations.
Oh.
Oh no, not sorry. Especially if your basket is made of clouds. Yes.
Yes.
So, Jeff Whittiard, hey, you're the first time that I've seen you, and you are here with a freebie.
I see Gothridge in there. Yeah, I know
Gothridge
some of these
Manor,
people. Jeff
Roxas,
Whittiart.
hey, and Lance the whatever that says. Some people's just names I cannot read off of this thing. Well, Alan Smalling, congratulations. So Lance, Alan, yes, you are most welcome, Jeff Whittiart. And so let's get back over to here. So, I could do this here. So I can do it like this as well. So Jeff Whitty,
Yeah, there's a bunch of
and
names.
then Gothridge Manor, Throxus, Lance the what is Rance the Irianek? Irianek. I cannot read that. Lance, if you could better spell your.
I miss the old names. I figured out how to change mine and get rid of that stupid 4-digit number at the end.
Oh,
Fortunate that nobody had jacked it, but
yeah.
so I changed it back to pretty much what it's supposed to be. I mean, I don't have any capitalizations in it now, which I think I could change it to that too, but yeah, I became Death Angel Shadow like 1722 or something goofy like that. I'm like, what is that? I hate that. And you can't, like people that their names on certain channels. It's like now they're PB 224296 hut hike.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Google making things better for us, not.
Yeah. So let me, since both you and Paul have joined in since the original topic, so where do you stand as far as like encouraging your players to think tactically? How do you go about doing that process?
Tactically, well, it depends. First of all, people they need to know that don't stare at your character sheet when you're playing. That you aren't your character is not everything on that sheet. And then if I don't trip myself here, I always personally reward innovation. Even in systems when I was running 5e, I would give people more XP for avoiding combat, especially in a creative way. My players, one of which was my wife, the other one was a roommate, and some other ones. They literally were in a game, and there was a couple of, I don't know if they were ogres or giants. Now we're talking over 20 years ago at this point. And instead of going straight into combat and attacking them, they broke out the casks of ale that they had, and just went and started drinking with the with the two ogres, partying with them, and so
you have to provide them with different different paths to get through the particular scene that they're in, and then but also like I said earlier on, maybe before you were on here, I had said that sometimes though combat is going to be the the best way. Like you gotta sometimes the fight or flight kind of thing. Sometimes the fight is like, hey, we have no other choice but to just dig our heels in and try to fight through this thing, and hopefully we make it out of here. But that's, I think, going to be a rarer instance than um than what most people would expect.
Well,
I don't want everyone
Well,
to go into
yeah.
every combat and thinking, oh, we're just going to fight everything to the death, and they're going to
Well,
fight us to the death, and that's going to be the end of it,
there needs to be a distinction. An encounter, it could be anything.
Hmm.
It doesn't necessarily, just like you have different definitions for, you make a distinction in the OSR definitions, right? An encounter is not just combat.
Right.
A trap is an encounter. A
Hmm.
puzzle is an encounter.
Yeah.
Dealing with an NPC
Yeah.
is an encounter. Encounters are not inherently good or bad.
Yeah.
And there should be multiple ways to resolve an encounter. But you're right. You're going after the big bad, or if your task that you're, the king or the mayor or whatever has charged you with doing is to take out this group of assassins or whatever, or smugglers or whatever. Um, yeah, sometimes you're going to have combat. You're not going to have a choice,
Yeah.
but and obviously if you've got intelligent thinking creatures, that's a very good line of demarcation, because
Yes.
obviously you're not going to argue with an ooze. You're not going to, you know,
We're going to try to
rats.
negotiate with these ghouls.
Yeah, these
It's
rats
like,
of unusual size, ROUSs as we like to call them,
mhm.
are you're not, yeah, you're gonna take them out,
Yeah.
right? But
Um, Now you can be tactical with ghouls in the sense of, you know, um, you can throw your halfling at them and then turn and run the other way. It's like,
did, did you listen to Flint Fireforge when he was talking about the preteen girls that he was running for? Because he does that for Boys and Girls Club, right? He was.
oh yeah, no, I didn't hear that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
so he said, these girls, man, they were ready to throw one of their party members off to the
yeah,
big bad and run away the other way.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
like
It's no, I
they're
didn't hear him
they're
say that, but
vicious.
but well, yeah. I mean, there's I actually had a former player who tried to negotiate with the big bad when the big bad the big bad guy was a chaotic evil werewolf that knew they were there to hunt him down.
Yeah,
All right, and turn or even worse, turn him over to the elves that were seeking out to hunt him down as well.
right,
And so he was like, well, I'm a bard. I'm going to try to, lull him into this and, what's a suggestion or whatever. And I was like, listen, a suggestion only, you can't use that ability to tell somebody to do something that they wouldn't normally do. Right. It's written right into the spell. I forget if it was a suggestion or a command, like you can't command something to kill itself, right?
right.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, no. And it was like, well, we should be able to negotiate with it. I was like, this is the big bad guy. There's nobody other than him, like above him in this situation. He's
Right.
cornered. He's not going to surrender because he knows that he will die if he does. So he's going to fight to the death. And he got so upset that I was just like, that's not the way that this particular, now any of his minions could have been negotiated with,
Right.
because they have, they have a different stake in the game here. They might see a better outcome for themselves.
Right.
But yeah, it's like sometimes negotiation isn't going to work. It's not that it was railroaded that way. It just doesn't make sense, and so I think that that's what players will develop over time is an understanding of how their character interactions can be handled in different ways for, for better outcomes based on which way they effectively choose the direction they're going in. And I think it has a lot to do with giving them both both positive and negative consequences for their actions. And over time they'll start to be able to better identify their choices and be like, all right, yeah, we're going to try this in this particular case because we feel that based on what we know, our characters know, based on what our characters know, this is the best course of action to do.
Right.
And I think that that's a better thing to encourage the players. I want my players to think through their characters more so than just roll dice and and fight through every situation that they're in.
Well, yeah, and tactical. I mean, in some cases, it's like, okay, get elevation.
Yes.
We were in a we were in a dungeon. This was another Patreon game that for Castles and Crusades.
Hmm.
And several of the guys, that were playing took up positions of elevation,
Hmm.
and being that I forget what I was playing now. I think it was a cleric. Yeah, I was like a dwarven cleric. So, you know, spell casting or turning, or as I call it, percasting. I'm very selective about. I don't, what spells when I use a spell. I don't want to waste them. Particularly in a certain situation. I want to make sure that I take full advantage of them. I want to make sure that a group of them are within range, not just I'm going after this one guy. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
meanwhile they're picking out the ones. It's like we're all saying, okay, you take out the far ones, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try and turn these ones, and and it was a tactical type situation with effectively they were ghouls,
Mm.
or zombies of some sort. So and it worked out, and we did not die. We didn't have nobody died in that game, unlike the previous time where we all got eaten whole. But that that was fun, yeah. And you're right. You got to think tact. Bear in mind, every one of us that was playing has been a DM or
Mhm.
a GM or a CK in one manner or another for many years. So
Right.
we're there to have fun.
Yeah.
We don't personally identify with our characters. We don't want them to die, but we're also not worried if they do. We get it, but we're gonna try and think like the character does, which I do when I'm running. The bad
Hmm.
guys. I think, okay, this guy over here hurt me. I'm going to go after him and try and take out that spellcaster. You know what I mean? It's the same
Right.
thing, and players need to embrace that as well. You know, look for the ones that are the most threatening for you first, and that type of stuff. So,
Right.
but if you don't have to go to combat, don't go to combat.
Right.
And running
Yeah. No.
away is not. It's not. There's no shame in running away.
Yeah.
When you go old school, you know, it wasn't expected for you to. You were supposed to go in, get the treasure, and try and get the treasure back out. Getting the
Mhm.
treasure back out was part of the challenge. It was
Yeah.
maybe more of the challenge because you've got, okay. You may have found, you know 5,000 gold pieces. How you gonna get it out of here?
Yeah.
And back then you didn't get the XP if you didn't get it out. So
Yeah. That's part of the reason why I took in my Dragon Slayer campaign. I took gold as XP out of the whole mix. I'm
yeah,
like, no, it's like what gold you get. It depends on what you do with it. That's how you gain XP.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So, and you can't convert if you have 1,000 gold pieces, you're not converting that whole 1,000 gold pieces into 1,000 XP. what you're going to do is you're going to, see how much of it you can utilize and what way you're utilizing it. And then you will get, that amount as XP, and then we'll see the consequences of what you did, like using a carousal table or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I do like
And
that mechanic. I like the corral. I'd like to see some expansion on it. I'm hoping, like with Shadow Dark, I'm hoping that there's even more
I
kind of
think there is in
expansion.
the new, in the
Yeah.
new one, but I've been using this here, which I think you're familiar with this as well. So I've been using this.
Yeah, I need to get my hands on a copy of that.
Yeah. So that I've been using. Plus, I mean, Dragon Slayer had a carousal system written into it as well, and it limited the amount that they could spend on carousal. And then the only two classes that get a direct, gold to XP are paladins, clerics, and thieves and monks,
Hmm.
because of their tithes and dues, but that's the only amount that they can convert directly to XP. So because they have to give up coin
Yeah.
for their tithes and dues, that is automatically converted to XP. And then if they have any residual, any leftover,
They
then
can.
they can spend that for additional. When I
Right.
had some players were like, "Oh, we don't get to do that." It was like, well, you also get to keep every gold piece you have. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, you have the advantage of, ultimately you will be wealthier. It's like you can't compare that to a paladin who has to, give up
Tithe. Yeah, he has to tithe.
90% of his tithe. It's
Yeah.
like it's like
Is it really 90%? Wow.
in some systems, yes.
Wow.
In
That's
some systems, they have to take like a vow of poverty. Now, they
mm,
can off-right, like they can offset some of that by saying, well, this isn't really, this is buying a new suit of armor, that's going to cost me 150 gold pieces for, so that's a little bit, and then I have to buy, a war horse and barding and everything, like, as long as it's something that enhances their ability as a paladin, then that doesn't have to be tithed. But any excess, they have to give up.
yeah. And the point that Jeff in the chat, Jeff
Yeah,
Leo,
and
I think that's one of the reasons why hirelings were expected to be had
mhm.
back in the day.
Oh yes.
You had hirelings, and that's an expense that comes from the
Mhm.
party treasure. So yeah, you've got this money, but you got to have people to help you. You've got your torch bearers you got to pay. Because how are you going to hold a torch and fire a bow at the same time?
Yeah, your porters,
You
your
might be able to do it.
the guys watching the cart and all of
Yeah.
that stuff, and also it becomes a thing, like I experienced when the players had a guide, and the guide was an NPC guide, and he was going through, and they were, you know, I mean, he traveled with them for quite some time, and then when the guide got killed, oh, they went berserk. They were like, "Oh, we're definitely getting revenge for this guy."
Yeah.
He's been with he became like their Gunga Din. You know what I'm saying? When and they're all, "Oh no, they went absolutely murder hobo." They became
Yeah.
Anakin Skywalker
Yeah,
slaughtering
going after the
sand
sand
people when
people.
they
Yeah.
got it
But
was bad. It was like, oh, okay, you guys went off the hook on that.
well, well,
But
well, well, the other thing about that's nice about having these hirelings, be it what they are, especially if you have a couple of them that are veterans, if your player dies, or your player character, I should say, dies,
mm,
uh, it, you know, uh, you can just real quickly, okay, you're now veteran number one,
mhm,
you know,
yeah,
or whatever, is Bob the fighter,
yeah,
and so you're still in the game. You know what I mean? And otherwise, now because otherwise you break the flow, and now you're turning around and rolling up a character and this and that and the other, and the whole flow of the game is stalled during that time,
Mhm.
or one person is no longer in there, and everything else. So I liked some of the old stuff. I'm still on the fence on the gold for XP direct thing.
Mhm.
I'm not a. I've tried milestones in the past, um,
I don't do
and
milestones either.
my players didn't like it. They hated it. They were like, I should get XP. I deserve XP for this. And it's like, well, yeah, well, you're gonna level up here at the end of this. Yeah, but really, I should be like blah blah blah,
Mm.
And then it just starts. It's like, okay, let's
Yeah.
forget milestones. I tried it. Personally, I get it, but I wasn't a fan myself. I could see their perspective on it. And they
Cool.
hated it. They hated it. Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, my
Yeah.
Chihuahua can't climb like that, but he
Yeah.
does
Me,
he does.
it doesn't seem
Um,
like it makes much difference. I mean, we only gain experience when we're in town, able to do things in town. Well,
yeah,
what's the
like
difference of
I
leveling
give
up?
them experience for actually doing things. So when they enter a room, if they search that room thoroughly and they're telling me this is what my character is doing, and my character is doing this, and my character is searching this desk and doing this and that and the other thing, then they're going to gain experience for just going through the room.
Yeah.
And looking for it. Now, if they walk back through that room again, they're not getting experience because they walk through back through that room again. But it's basically exploration experience. Then there's combat experience, obviously. So they're going to get XP whether they kill it, they negotiate with it, or they chase it off. All right, they're still getting XP for however they manage to do it, which again encourages that every
Well,
fight doesn't have to be a fight to the death,
what?
and then they get experience for how they spend the gold.
Yeah.
Not what I like about Dragon Slayer was Dragon Slayer doesn't give any experience points
Killing things.
for magic items,
Oh, okay.
which
Okay.
was huge in like AD&D first edition or second.
Right.
It's like and you become like I don't want to give magic items to like a first level character, and you know the the treasure that's listed on this particular description of the room is a magic item that's a 15,000 experience point magic item. It's like, well, I'm not going to give that and have it alter the entire party outcome and everything like that. I mean, when I ran Dark Druids, which was a Robert Kuntz adventure for my 1E group, I mean, there were 3 artifacts in that game, in that adventure. I
Yeah.
was like, and they weren't meant to actually end the adventure with still in possession of the artifact, but they would still gain the XP from it. I was like, oh, there's no way. I was like, so I told my players in my Dragon Slayer thing, I was like, you might get a powerful magic item more so than I've ever done in the past. But remember that magic item is going to have consequences attached to you possessing it. All right. You
Mhm.
might want to use it up until you get to town, but once word gets out that you're in possession with it, others are going to be looking to take it from you. So you might not want to hold on to it for very long. And since they're not getting XP from it, unless it's an incredible magic item, they're going to want to get rid of it too. I was like, oh, I'll pass that on to the museum and let them deal with the consequences of it, or to the guild house or whatever.
Right.
Um,
I always made it a point to tell my players, and then follow through with this. I will reward the party with more XP for avoiding a combat situation when possible.
mhm.
And especially if the more creative you are, the better. Um, over whatever the standard XP would be for killing that monster. And I did this in 3rd edition and in 5th edition.
Yeah, it's a good way of, again, getting them to think, well, this is a better tactic to use in this situation because we're still getting XP for it,
Right.
and we're not running the same kind of risk. And I give them exactly the same. If they flee, you're getting experience for them fleeing. You've defeated them, in that scenario.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, and so many of the modules that have been produced by WotC and whatever, it's like incremental, like as you go on, and I think it goes hand in hand with the railroad. But it's like, okay, well, now you're encountering this, and you're supposed to be at this level to encounter that, and it increments up. Now you're instead of fighting kobolds, now you're fighting, something bigger, and then something bigger, and then something bigger. But it's really the same thing, just on a different scale.
Well, their starter boxes work that way. So the adventures in their starter boxes they're going to go from 1st to 6th level in 6 sessions,
which is crazy. I mean,
right.
But in the old school days, it didn't work that way. You could run into a dragon at 1st level. You better be running away. You could run into something that was big, and that you were not ready to handle. There was nothing stopping you from going in there. Now, if you want to fight it, be my guest, but you will lose. I can guarantee you almost assuredly that your little 2nd or 3rd level wizard is not going to take out a 10th level group of whatever crime lords or a rival thieves guild or something like
Right.
that. You're not and I think some of it comes from the hero mentality, and games went from trying to do something on the hero's journey to I'm a hero and I'm going to do anything and everything. I can, you can't, I can't die, and it's gotten to the point where it's very difficult to have a player down. And I've said for a long time, if one person doesn't at least fall, if one of the characters doesn't fall, I don't mean die, but fall in a combat session, then it was probably too easy for you, because it should be a challenge.
Yeah.
It should be, especially if you're taking on something that's right at your level, and I don't know. I don't know what the other guys think. I don't want to monopolize it.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, last game we did have a difficult game, a difficult fight without it actually knocking anybody out.
But there's a difference between, like, I know Eric Tenkar recently put up a poll where he said, like, how often should you have characters die in a campaign, long lasting campaign or whatever. And the only thing I said was that, I use a different system for my my AD&D 1E campaign. When I was running that, I told my players that the way I'm going to do it is that let's say you have a 13 Constitution. Maybe that's a +1. It might actually have to be higher than that off the top of my head. But let's say you have a Constitution of 15. I know that's a +1. So 15, you have a +1, hit point modifier. Well, that means that you don't have to make a death save, right? Or a system shock roll, which is really what I was using, until you get to, because you have a +1. So at -2 hit points, you must make a Constitution check, all right, a system shock roll. But it's not going to be at your 15, your 15 Constitution score. It's going to be on a 13 because you're at -2.
Right.
All right. If you got brought suddenly to -3, then it would be a system shock at that level. You fail the system shock, you're dead. All right. That's it. One roll, you're dead. All right. No bouncing back from that. If you are, if you're like really messed up, let's say you're at like -9 hit points, and that's when you're making your system shock, and you make the roll. If I check and see, well, it was a headshot, you can't be resurrected. All right, they have to restore your corpse first before they can resurrect you. And I made those two spells very expensive and very hard to find. The restoration and that. So anyway, after 108 weekly sessions, there were, if my memory serves me right, if there were 33 times that they had to make those system shock rolls. So it worked out to roughly 30% of the time they were in a situation where a character, a PC, could have died. All right. Now, during that whole course, only one actually did die. In one encounter was against a dragon. 3 of them went down. 3 of them had to make that roll. So a party of 7, I think at the time, almost lost 3 characters in that moment, and they were 10th level characters. You know what I'm saying? So they were pretty darn high level characters that were, one roll away from dying. All right. And I thought that worked out to be a fairly well balanced, over the course of that time, a fairly well balanced ratio of potential character death.
Yeah.
I was about to say, what happened was we got attacked by orcs at night while most of the party was asleep. 2 of them went for the dwarf, and I decided, well, I don't want him to die yet, so casted hold person on the 2 orcs. So close to losing that person.
Well, yeah.
Chthonic, you let that player, you let the chips where fall where they may in that circumstance, right?
Yep.
So if 4 of the 5 get the memo when they run, all right, or try to avoid the fight, the one is going to get left out hanging there. And I had a player that wasn't Leroy Jenkins, but he just thought that the fact that his character was invisible made his character undetectable from any other senses than just the sight. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, no. They can smell you. They can hear you breathing. Then they'll have a general sense of where you're at. And he got very pissed off at that, concept. It was like, I don't know if Paul, you might have heard this scenario.
I've heard this several times, and I know who we're talking about.
So it was like, it was like trying to get that through to the player that, no, these are wereboars.
Mm-hmm.
Boars can smell, a freaking truffle buried 50 feet under the earth. They can smell your sweaty ass running around the combat, even though that you're invisible.
Yeah. Yeah, you just hand them an index card with 2 bullet points on it. The first one saying, you're a middle-aged man crying about a game, and 2, this is what tremor sense is. There are creatures in there, they're like, all the worms, I'm pretty sure, are blind, and they just use tremor sense to track you. Invisibility isn't like the I win. He was like an elementary school kid being like, I've got invincible force field, you can't kill me. And it's like, cool, go over there. We're playing here. You go over there.
My get out of jail free card is what's it called? There's a spell. Basically, it teleports you back to your home, to a certain area, religious area, I think. I can't remember the name of it
Oh,
now.
it's called Recall.
No, not Recall. It's in Dragon Slayer.
Oh, where to
Oh,
yeah,
Word of Recall. Yeah, that was it.
It's
Okay.
like-
Yeah,
it's in a lot of games. It's like yeah, Word
Sorry.
of Recall.
I was trying to
Yeah.
remember it. It was just, ugh.
It's a sometimes players will not think tactically if they think that they have a spell that will cure all. Basically kind of redo the whole silvery barbs kind of thing. Oh no, I can force you to re-roll. Right? It's like, no, you can't. It's like, you're not using that on the on the game master. There's no re-rolls kind of thing. As far as that, I don't know how that ever made it into any
Game, yeah. No,
any
I-
role-playing game. How that got through anybody that knows what the hell it is to run a game, to allow a spell that, and a low-level spell too. What is that, first level spell? I think Silvery Barbs is like a first level spell.
What, Silvery Barbs?
Yeah,
When they added that, when did they add that? Was that
probably Tasha's.
Yeah. Well,
That's
that's why I
possibly
say
Tasha's,
Tasha's.
That's
Tasha's
the one.
I call
totally
Tasha-
destroyed Dungeons and Dragons.
It did. It did.
Bottom line.
Yeah. It was. I still call it 5-5. That's to me the difference, the demarcation line. Up until Tasha's came out, 5th edition was pretty solid. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid.
It was serviceable.
right.
Yeah.
didn't mind it.
I mean, I found what I consider to be better stuff now, but
Yeah.
Strixhaven. That's when it came out.
Well,
it came in Strixhaven.
Strixhaven,
Well, that was
yeah.
another disaster of a,
Yeah.
another disaster of a source book.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was like, and Strixhaven came after Tasha's, so it was some Strixhaven nonsense. Yeah, so it was Strixhaven. Another piece of garbage.
I mean, they were trying to capitalize. They're always chasing whatever the end thing was.
Hmm.
They were like, "Oh, we want to have something just like Harry Potter,"
Yeah.
but it wasn't anything like
Well,
Harry
just
Potter.
like 4th edition was World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft, yeah, and
You
and long before, the first thing my wife and I said, because we both played WoW, we said it's like they tried to turn WoW into a tabletop game, and this is before people were saying it online. So, I'm not going to say I'm the one who came up with the phrase, because I wound up hearing other people say the same thing throughout the years. But I said it back then, like right after I only ever got the core books. I was like, nope, this is it. I'm not ever allowing Dragonborn in my games ever again. I'm not using 4th edition. I just, nothing. We tried it. We made it through a half a session and decided it was garbage. So
4th edition.
I forget who
best,
wrote
best D&D.
Strixhaven. I think Amanda Heyman wrote Strixhaven, I believe.
I don't even know who that is.
I have no idea.
But it's good that I know that now, because now if I see her name, I just won't buy whatever her name is.
Well,
Well,
she used to be with Paizo, and then she came to Wizards of the Coast. I think the only thing she wrote was Strixhaven.
It's kind of like the two people that now are, I guess, are in charge there are kind of the same thing. They were both in during Radiant Citadel, and they're
Diarmis and no experience whatsoever.
Talentless people.
Yeah.
They have zero talent. Period.
I think she discovered Dungeons and Dragons in 2018.
Yeah.
It's
For all my dislike of some of the guys that were there before on a personal level, mostly because they hate me. Perkins and Crawford, I I respected them and their knowledge of gaming at least. I had more respect, I think, for Mike Merles. I like Mike Merles.
Hmm.
But I think he was put in an untenable position. But
Oh
that,
yeah, no, he was put in a, but still, I mean, he was the architect of 5e, and so anything that you saw in 5e that was not, you know, short rests and 3 death saves that had to be failed in order for your character to die was just right from the gate, bad game design. It just was not really D&D. So it really started right from the jump that it had major weaknesses to it, and it just opened the door for more to come in. So they definitely needed to, and they let it just get too bad. I mean, is there something like 54 subclasses now or something crazy like that? It's like it's just too damn bloated.
yeah. Well, I need to go.
Yeah,
I have a show coming up here.
Yeah,
in
I'm gonna
about
wrap
10
this thing
minutes.
up very, very soon too, because we are, we're pretty much around the 2 hour
already-
mark. So, and I think we pretty much hit on, my topic that I was going to talk about, which was, thinking tactically, and I want to, I want my players and hopefully others will, think about the different ways that players can have their characters act in encounters. And like you said, and like I said earlier, Death Angels, an encounter is not just combat. An encounter is you walk into a room. When I turn on YouTube in 10 minutes, I'm encountering something. I don't know what I'm going to encounter, but I will be encountering something. The your wilderness is an encounter, right? As soon as you go out the door, you're encountering something, and you're going to have you better have a tactical mindset. Like, I'm watching this blizzard unfold. It's like,
Oh, Lord.
tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a plan for how we're going to tackle this. Although right now it's looking very, very minor for us here, but I'm more inland than the coast.
Okay, I'm going to go out because my guests
Oh.
are already waiting for me. So I'm going to go
All right.
ahead and
You have a
and
good
leave.
one. All right. Thanks for stopping in.
Everybody check out my channel. I got Dean and Vicky from Everett Games. They got a new RPG coming out. So
Oh,
I'm
cool.
talking to them. So you guys have a good one. Bloodworth,
All right.
Paul,
You have a good
Tim,
one, guys.
and all the people in the chat. We'll see you guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Paul. So, Paul,
So these two-
when
Sorry.
are you? Let's see. I'm trying to remember.
It's every other
Are-
Thursday
are
if we're
you in
thinking
my-
for Deadlands.
You're in the dwarf campaign, right?
No, Deadlands every other Thursday.
Oh, Deadlands. All right.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Because the dwarf one I think is on Saturdays, and I'm
it's
in
on
a game
Saturdays.
I'm in a game that's pretty much every Saturday but one a month. So
Oh,
that's,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So yeah, Deadland. That was a great first session.
Yeah.
I really can't wait to get into that. I'm looking at picking up the token pack. All right, because there's an expanded token pack, and awesome.
Oh, for roll 20.
Yeah, for Roll20.
There you
directly from Pinnacle Games.
Pinnacle.
So
Oh,
it's an
Yeah,
official.
probably gonna have to tell you, be careful. They do tend to be kind of small. If you're talking about those tokens that you get for Roll20.
You could stretch them.
Yeah, you can stretch it.
Yeah,
You can
I
change
know.
the size of them. It's. I don't think they're going to be small. They're pretty good sized and everything like that. There's a whole
But
like
Bubba bought
everything
one of
that's in
those.
the rule
And
books.
he had some.
Yeah,
issues
everything
being-
that's in the rule books is in that plus some extras, like 215 tokens for
There you go.
for like $19. So I'm
It's
like,
not
all right,
bad.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of me creating all the crap and everything like that, I mean, I'm still looking for borders for you guys, but I think I just created a border for them that's just a simple black square. But
Okay.
I'd love to find like wagon wheel border or something, something
Oh,
along the
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
token border. Gotcha.
something
Yeah.
Western, Western style border. Like I don't want to.
Watch a poster border.
Yeah. So if you guys come across any that are free and they look cool, let me know.
Sure.
Because on the token makers that I have, they're free token makers, and
And
even
they're pretty
their
basic.
premium ones don't include anything that fits the tone.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I am going to go get myself a cup of coffee, and thanks for stopping in, and
Sure.
everyone else in the chat. Thank you very much. Congratulations to those of you that got a free membership. You can go to my Discord channel, and in the Discord channel, which you can find at the end of any one of my videos or in the description of all my videos, go on in there and tell me that you've got a membership from this stream, and I will give you the role, and that will open up various opportunities for you to play in any games that I happen to be running, or anybody else that happens to be running any games, and advertising them on my channel as well. So guys, I will see you certainly between now and then. We'll definitely be chatting between now and 2 weeks from now. So
Sure.
it's like that's one problem with doing it every other week is that it feels like forever. Especially when you had a
I
great
know.
time. It's
I
like a
know.
long darn wait. But I do have my other Thursday night game with Shadow and Sun. So as long as that lasts, we'll be still doing alternating Thursdays. If that ever comes to an end, then we'll go to every Thursday. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes along as
Okay.
well. All right. Unless I find another day that works for the 4 of you. I'm glad to have only 4 players too, because that can easily move around. Possibly working around 4 people's schedules is a hell of a lot easier than working around 7 people's schedules, right?
Yeah, I know.
All right. So you guys have a good one.
I'll say.
All right, everyone. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining in. You all have a great rest of your week, and take care.